everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Rehana, and a very warm welcome to our second webinar about data privacy and AI systems. I'm a learning manager here at the Raspberry Pi Foundation, where I worked on designing the AI safety resources for the AI safety unit that we released very recently. And I'm very glad that you're joining us, whether you're a teacher, a parent, a club leader who's navigating the world of AI with yourself or with young people. I'm very excited to have you here because this webinar is all about helping you feel informed and empowered when it comes to data privacy, AI, and AI safety, so that you can support the young people around you to develop the skills they need to be safe, critical, and informed users of AI-driven technologies. I'm also joined here by Mac, who's my colleague. Mac, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Mac. I'm also a learning manager at Raspberry Pi, and I worked with Rehana on the AI safety resources. I'm really excited to get to talk to you all today about data privacy, show you the things that we have made. We're really excited about the webinar, so welcome.
Yeah, we're also joined by Andreas, who helped me explore some of the big questions around ethics, transparency, and responsibility in AI, especially when it comes to the leading companies who are developing the very AI systems that we're using on a daily basis. So, Andreas, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Andy Scow. I've been a privacy engineer at Google for like 11 years now. I work on kids data, abuse, machine learning. I've covered some law enforcement stuff. I did some of our very early work on machine learning fairness. I have a long, weird background before that.
I'm sure it's an interesting, very interesting background. Now, Andreas will stay in the background where he's going to come back popping up for any questions that we have. But so he won't go anywhere, just in the background.
See you in a bit, Andreas.
See you in a bit. Now over the next hour or so, I will introduce the AI safety unit that my team and I created. And it includes a session that is called Your Data in AI. And now the AI safety unit is part of our new free resources that fall under Experience AI. And I'm going to give it over to Mac to give a little overview of what Experience AI is.
Oh, sorry, Rehana, I also moved the slide, silly me. Experience AI, for those of you that don't know, is an educational program for AI literacy aimed at young people ages 11 to 14 that kind of teaches them everything they need to know to navigate the world of artificial intelligence and machine learning. It's been made in partnership with between the Raspberry Pi Foundation, where Rehana and I work, and Google DeepMind, and also Google.org. And as part of that work, we have localized and translated it into, I believe, 23 different languages now, working with local partners around the world to reach an estimated 1.5 million young people taking these AI literacy resources. So really, really exciting. Just to give you a brief overview of what is in the Experience AI resources, we have sort of 4 different categories. So we have the original Foundations of AI unit, which is the first thing that we made, which is 6 lessons that takes young people from sort of no knowledge of AI and machine learning at all the way up to creating their own machine learning models to solve real world problems, covering things like bias, careers in AI, looking at models and decision trees, and all different types of machine learning. I also have a set of resources on large language models. So this is showing young people sort of the capabilities of these tools like Gemini and ChatGPT, but also giving them a bit of a critical lens to think when is appropriate to use them, what they're designed for, what they're best for, and how they can help them. We also have ecosystems in AI. We think that a really effective way of teaching AI literacy is through other subjects. And so this is our first sort of foray into that, a bit of a crossover between biology and AI literacy, covering a project in the Serengeti and classification. So that's really exciting. And of course, the final resources we have, what we're here to talk to you about today, is AI safety. This is designed to covers 3 different sessions that these webinars are about, and I think Rehana is about to tell you more about that.
Yes, I will progress to the next slide. Oh, thank you. So AI safety, like Mac just told you, it's one of our most recently developed resources, and we're very proud of it. Like the rest of the Experience AI resources, they're also like everything we create here at the Raspberry Pi Foundation, they're completely free. And they include videos, they include unplugged activities, they include a range of discussion points, and they're all ready to be used in any setting that you prefer, be it in the classroom, be it at home, an after-school club, or even at a code club. Now, the AI Safety Unit was designed to support educators, club leaders, parents, and carers with resources, with comprehensive resources to educate 11 to 14-year-olds about AI safety. The AI Safety Unit is independent from the rest of our resources, so you don't have to have background knowledge in AI or CS, or even have taken our Foundations of AI unit to be able to take this on. And the AI Safety Unit is structured in a way that it consists of 3 resources or 3 lessons, and they can be taught in no particular order. So they were designed to give you as much flexibility. And so we have a session on your data and AI, which we're going to be talking about today. We have a session about media literacy in the age of AI, and we have a session called Using AI Tools Responsibly. Now, as I said before, every lesson comes with a video. It comes with a set of discussion points and also 2 unplugged activities. And it is up to you how you want to mix and match these activities and discussions in your lesson. We just designed it in a way that it would give you as much flexibility to deliver the resources in any way that is most appropriate for your setting. And like I said before, none of these resources require you to have experience or a background in CS or AI, or even require to have taken the Foundations of AI unit. Now, in this webinar, I will explore several skills and concepts that are not only covered in the AI safety resources, but are also very important for young people to grapple with and to master in an AI-driven world. So we're going to look at how AI systems use data. We're going to look at how data privacy, what kind of data privacy choices young people can make. We're also going to go through the resource itself, and we're going to talk about the unplugged activities. I'm going to show you Data Detective and Business Boss, and we're also going to bring in Andreas throughout the lesson and throughout this webinar to get some of his expert insights on data privacy and responsibility in AI. Now, young people are being taught all kinds of digital literacy skills in schools and at home perhaps as well, where they look at like personal information and why it shouldn't be shared online. They look at establishing rules about appropriate websites. Some parents set up parental controls to avoid accidental sharing of content online. And these are all about equipping young people with the skills to be responsible users of the internet and to navigate it safely. Now, many of today's technologies are AI-driven, so including all the social media platforms like Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, but also the video streaming services like Netflix and YouTube. And these platforms are examples of data-driven systems, which means that they rely on vast amounts of data, including personal data, to make predictions and recommendations. And we make a very important distinction between data-driven systems and rule-based systems, because rule-based systems are what traditional computer systems are built on. So they consist of step-by-step instructions that are very rule-based. Now, when you look at data-driven systems, they use lots and lots and lots of data to train a model that detects patterns in that data and uses those patterns to make future predictions. So an example of that is of a large language model. And large language models are trained on huge volumes of text. often taken from the internet, from websites, from articles, and it consists of billions and billions and billions of words and billions of data points. And what large language models do is they take these data, or systems do, what developers of large language models do is they take this data and they train a model that detects patterns in all these words that we fed it in, and to predict the most likely next word in a sentence. And usually that will look like something like this. So I might go on a large language model or on a chatbot, and I might ask for a question like, how can I introduce myself to attendees of this AI safety webinar? And I will get a whole bunch of options. But in every section, the next word is predicted. The most likely next word is predicted in a sentence. And that is how we create these leaps of text and these chunks of text. Now, when it comes to social media platforms are also driven by data-driven systems. And they incorporate AI systems that kind of learn from large amounts of data. So every scroll, every like, every share, they're all data points that enable these systems to learn from. And when I say learn, what I mean is that an underlying machine learning system will use this data to identify patterns in the data and make predictions based on this data. So the data that we're kind of talking about here is the scrolls and likes and shares that I just mentioned, but also your search history, what you have watched before and for how long, who you interact with, and even the videos and photos that you upload. And of course, the young people we work with, they're growing up surrounded by these systems, and they often lack a clear understanding of how their data is being used and collected. Now, you see how important of a topic this is, because these are foundational skills, just like digital literacy and internet literacy. AI literacy is a foundational skills that young people need to thrive in an AI-driven world. And so the lesson on your data and AI is all about that. And I would love to show you a little bit more about what that lesson is about. So I've queued up the video called from the Your Data and AI lesson, which is also played at the start of every lesson, or every lesson starts off with a video. And in the Your Data and AI lesson, we start off with this video. So I think it's queued up. And I'm gonna...
Artificial intelligence is powering systems all around you, and data created by people is what drives this new technology. It's more important than ever to make smart choices about how to use and share information. There are ways to keep information safe. If someone decides to trust a company with their data, they expect the company to use it responsibly. This is nothing new. So how should AI systems change the way you think about data privacy? AI systems work differently to software people might be used to, and use data in new ways. Traditional software uses a rules-based approach, which involves using logic carefully designed by a programmer. Data goes into the program, and the rules define how it is processed to arrive at the output. Newer AI systems use a completely different data-driven approach, training a model with loads of example data. Instead of following rules, the model detects patterns in the data and repeats them. When a user scrolls through social media, the platform uses a model that has been trained using data about videos and the users watching them. That model generates a feed using data about the user, like their age, gender, and country, as well as content they have watched and engaged with in the past. Every time the user watches a new video, the platform has more data to make better recommendations. You might want to consider where the data used to create the model came from, and whether users agreed for it to be used that way. For example, the pictures or videos someone shares online. How would they feel if an AI model generated a picture that looked just like them, because their data had been used to create it? A platform might get data about how users interact with a model. When someone supplies data as the input to a model, it should be clear what happens to it afterwards. Companies should present users with choices about the ways they use data. Using the powers available to you, check the privacy settings of a platform you are using. Make sure you are happy with how your data is shared and used. Protect yourself by thinking carefully before sharing information. Check your profiles and your settings. Decide whether the benefits of a tool are worth it. You can always find alternatives if you're not happy with a platform's policies. Think about the data-driven systems you already use. What data are you providing them with, and how do you think it is shaping the output? What data privacy choices will you make in an AI-powered world?
Yeah, this is an amazing video, one of my favorite videos. And this video does come with captions, and is currently being translated, both the voiceover and the captions, in about 23 languages. So the key ideas from the video is that there is a key distinction between rule-based systems and data-driven systems, where, as I explained before, rule-based systems come with logic that is carefully designed by a programmer. And then you have the newer AI systems that use a data-driven approach and that rely on vast amounts of data to detect patterns and make predictions. And that's why there is a short post-video activity that we have designed. And this activity, called AI or Not AI, asks learners to look at 3 scenarios and then decide whether they are rule-based or data-driven, kind of to help cement the idea and the understanding of what data-driven systems are. So Mac, maybe I should ask you this question. If there is a recipe app that recommends recipes based on a user's social media feed, would that count as AI or not as AI?
I think it's clear from the description that it's using data from a user's social media feed. Mm-hmm. So that makes me think it would be data-driven and therefore AI.
Yes, well done. Yes, yeah. So exactly like Men just said, this app would use information and data from the user's posts and social media account. It would also use that to compare to other users' activity and kind of like usage, and make a prediction of what the user would like to eat next or is likely to eat next. And so this is a data-driven approach where you take lots of data, try to detect patterns in the data, and then make predictions based on this data. Now, this might be a very silly example. Like, I don't know if there are apps like that would recommend food and recipes based on your social media feed. But it does illustrate the point that we often are surrounded by AI-driven systems and applications without realizing it. And especially for young people, they are surrounded by AI-driven systems, and they might not know that they are surrounded by those. And this brings me to a question that I would like to ask Andreas. So if we can put Andreas back on the stage.
Welcome back.
Welcome back, Andreas. Because are there any data-driven systems that young people might already be interacting with?
Yeah, I mean, I think the easiest thing to think about is just if you're on the internet and you're interacting with the internet, you're creating data, right? And the models that we build, everything from the largest AI models, so LLMs, to models which tell us which soup recipes you might like, they're built out of data about human preferences, right? So if you ask the question about soup recipes, we keep an answer, we train the model, and that turns a simple fact about which kind of soup a person likes into a statistical summary of what kind of soup people like in general and why, right? So I think there's this like general idea that LLMs are a different kind of thing than what we were doing 10 years ago, right, when you were watching YouTube. But the theory here is mostly the same, right? We're turning a large volume of data about text into a general theory of what word comes next. And the more general we can get that theory, the better, right? So let's say that you're logging into Google search, right? You navigate to google.com, you get some search results, and you click one. Well, how did we decide what order the search results come up in? Well, substantially, it's based on general patterns of what other people have clicked in the past, right? We're making guesses, statistically informed guesses, but still guesses about what you're going to want. And those guesses are based on what people have done before, right? So there's this circular process where what users did in the past determines what the model does in the future, right? And some of that, most of that, is determined just by, like data about people interacting with the service, right? Like sometimes you can get leverage against a problem by learning what specifically a person did. But the way more useful data is data about what people do in general, right? And that's the sort of thing you can turn off if you want, right?
So you're kind of touching upon the next question that I would like to ask you, because what kind of data, what kind of choices do young people have, and what should young people know about data privacy when they're using these AI tools? Again, what are the choices that they can make on these platforms?
Yeah, I mean, I think like the most important thing to know is that you can make choices, right, about what data you send over, right? You can't make every choice, right? There's some data which comes to the service as a consequence of what you're doing, right? If you search for a like recipe, right, you have to tell the service what recipe you're looking for, right? That creates some data as just a matter of course, right? If you are navigating from one place to another, right, we have to know where you are and where you're going, or we can't answer your question, right? But for a lot of features, like you're in control of what data will be used for building the models, right? And no service needs everybody's data in order to do it, right? So, for instance, on YouTube, you can turn off watch history, right? If you don't want us knowing what you watch, we don't have to know, right? We can just show you the videos, right? Now, there's a trade-off there, right? Like if we don't know what kind of videos you're like, we're going to make worse guesses about what you specifically like. And we're going to rely on general data about the entire world, and we won't know anything about your place in it, right? But if you don't want us to know, that's your right. You can make that choice, flip the switch, and we'll just forget what videos you watched, right? We'll know in the moment when we're actually sending you the bits, right? But afterwards, we're going to forget.
Thank you, Andreas. These are some really good choices that you elaborated on that young people can take, and it's all about it's all about being aware of these of what kind of choices you can make and what kind of control you have over your data. So thank you for elaborating on that.
Yeah, I really like, sorry, Hannah, to get in your flow, but I really like that idea. And I think there was a comment that came up about, have you got any concrete advice for young people of how to navigate them? And I think what's really good there is you've given them this idea of thinking of data that you have to share, right? To use a service that, enables you to make that, enables that service to work, but also being aware of what data you have some choices over. And so that allows you to sort of focus in on these privacy statements or policies about what choices do young people actually have. And I think that's a really powerful way to look at data instead of just one big hole. It's like what is necessary and what do I have a choice over, and am I okay with that? What choice do I want to make?
And it's not my speaker's notes, but I think it's also important to know that like even if you make the choice in the moment, like, oh yeah, I'm going to turn on watch history, right? Like you can turn that off and delete all of it, right? Like you can make that data go away, right? Yeah. Our job is to hold on to your data for as long as you want us to have it, and when you don't want us to have it anymore, it's our job to get rid of it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andreas.
All right. I'm gonna go next up. We're gonna put Andreas backstage again, but we're gonna get you back in a bit to ask you some more questions. Because this brings me to the next topic, which is the reason why we created this whole AI safety unit was to facilitate these conversations and to give you tools to have those conversations and discussions with your students. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the pedagogy and about how we design these things, and then I'm going to have Mac talk about the pedagogy. So I'll just quickly touch upon what we have in the resource and how we develop those. Now, you already saw in the video, you already saw that the lesson comes with a video, but it also comes with 2 unplugged hands-on activities. Now, if you haven't heard of unplugged activities, these are activities that don't require access to computers or to any kind of technology. to help make these concepts as concrete as possible. And so these activities are not just designed to deliver content, they're also designed to spark discussions, to build critical thinking, and to deepen the students' understanding of the concepts that we're introducing throughout the lesson through something that we call the semantic wave approach. And if you haven't heard of the semantic wave approach, it's when you introduce a complex topic and you break it down. When you break it down and it comes down this wave, and the bottom of this wave, you will deconstruct it and do an activity, like a hands-on activity, to really cement the idea that you're introducing. And you want to explore this topic in a playful, familiar context. And then you want to bring learners back up the wave and back to the big idea, to the complex idea that you introduced at the beginning, but now with a deeper understanding and more confidence to talk about it. And you can check out this link that has more about the semantic wave approach.
And of course, so this is that is some specific pedagogy that we used for these resources in particular. But of course, we sort of try to embed these pedagogies across all of our resources. So we think it's really important to sort of be upfront with concepts and then allow young people to explore them, to sort of be really clear about what we're learning and when, and then letting young people unpack them either through a semantic wave or through a practical activity or some sort of method for them to really kind of get to grips with the concept. I think it's really important to allow for collaboration, allowing young people to work together to solve problems. And these resources are full of opportunities for young people to work in groups. You'll hear about some of the activities today. There's a really fun game that Rehana is going to talk about that it's sort of all about working together. Of course, we have that unpack, unplug, repack, which is again sort of that semantic wave shape, but it's this idea that we start with the concept, we take it apart with young people, we get them to get hands-on, and then we put it back to this sort of more abstract level. Also, we think it's really important to address and directly challenge misconceptions. If we think there is a potential for a misconception to develop, we try to be very direct with it, and we try to provide information for teachers to do that too. And we really like to make things concrete. So, we're doing this today by inviting Andreas along to give some real examples from his sort of vast experience in this webinar, but also in the resources themselves. We try to sort of bring it back to real world context and examples as much as we can. Now, that is a really quick overview of what I could talk to you about for another full hour webinar. So if you want to read more about this, you can go to the short link that's on the screen right now, and that will take you to the educator guide on the website, which is translated in a few languages now. It'll eventually get to all 23, but you can read more about all of these pedagogies and how they work for AI safety. Sorry, I thought was the end of my thing. We also, so we're also going to talk to you about some guided discussions. So part of these resources are all about giving space for young people to have discussions about the choices they might want to make. I think this is an odd space for us because a lot of these things don't necessarily have right answers. Instead, we are empowering young people with concepts and knowledge so that they can make informed choices, right? Like Andrea said, you don't have to share your watch history, but you can, and that's a choice, young people. I'm not here to tell a young person that they shouldn't do that. They should or shouldn't do that. I'm here to let them know that choice is available. And some of the ways we do these discussions are through sort of classic think, pair, share tactics, right? Where we get people to pair up and work together and share their ideas with the wider class. But we also give some ideas for sort of more formal guided discussions. There's stand where I stand debates where people go around and they stand based on various stances to do with the topic. There's also jigsaw activities, which are sort of smaller activities done on tables that then sort of when combined lead to a whole class discussion. Again, more information, more discussion sort of formats in the educator guide, which you can get to by following that link.
Thank you, Mac. Yeah, and we're gonna show you some of these discussion points as well, and some of the key takeaways that we would like students to take away, and learners to take away from these guided discussions. So maybe let's now talk a little bit about how we structured the lesson itself. So we recommend that you watch the video at the start of the session. And so we played this video as well. and that's the Your Data and AI video, but every lesson comes with a different video. And after watching the video with your learners, you can either choose a topic to discuss with your learners in the same format that Mac just explained about like the kind of strategies that we have to create that space for students to have these rich discussions. Or you could complete one or both of the unplugged activities. Or you could mix and match. So you could do discussion and unplugged, or in one unplugged activity. You could do both unplugged activities. You can just do one unplugged activity, and you can also just do one discussion. So again, to give you that flexibility to structure the lesson the way that you would like it to be structured. So let's start off with Data Detective. And Data Detective is an unplugged activity where the aim is to help young people understand how data is collected and what that journey might look like on a social media platform. And that the activity takes learners on a journey with Aya, who posts a picture of a milkshake on her social media platform. Now, of course, the social media platform that we used is a fictional, made-up platform called Buzzworthy, but it still reflects some of the key processes like sharing content and interacting with others. When you want to join, you have to agree to terms and conditions. And now Aya realizes that she's being shown content that is strangely related to what she just had posted on her social media profile with the milkshake. And the learners are tasked to kind of track, and the learners are tasked to play the role of a data detective to help Aya track where her data is going and who might be using it by going through the terms and conditions of Buzzworthy. So part of this unplugged activity is that we give them a sheet with the terms and conditions, and they have to go read through it. And we also give them a data detective worksheet where they have to fill in all the kinds of data that Buzzworthy is collecting. So we have personal data and usage data, and these are all specified in the terms and conditions. So the job of the learners is to go through the terms and conditions and read it. And we will use the worksheet to map and talk about how the personal data and usage data is used and like to what kind of platforms it goes to, how it feeds into AI systems. We also look at third-party organizations like advertisers and how they might use Aya's data to make better predictions and better recommendations to her. We also have them fill in the bubbles. So the bubbles are the organizations or the systems that are involved in this whole data detective activity. And they will look at how the data is moving, right? So where is it going to? Where is it flowing to? Who is using Aya's data? In particular, we prompt them to consider the recommendation systems and what data the platform would use to make these recommendations of content, like the advertisements for local cafes in Aya's instance. And how does their usage data, like the videos and posts that they upload or the music that they interact with, influence what they see on the platform? Then the learners will look at how AI influences Aya's feed, and they explore image recognition software, where they learn about how images are used to analyze objects in the images, and then use that to feed into recommendation systems, where recommendation systems take all of this data, analyze all this data from someone's social media account, and they use this information to identify preferences by comparing her to similar users. So again, it's taking data, analyzing and detecting patterns, and then using that to make predictions. Finally, they will discuss what they might advise Aya to do next. Should they advise her to just keep on sharing her data freely for better recommendations? Should they advise her to adjust her privacy settings and choose who to share data with and what kind of data to share? Or should she limit her data to the bare minimum to the minimum necessary. And in this last bit, it's very important that learners know that all the options are valid choices, and it's up to them to decide what their comfort levels are around each one of them, and what they would say to Aya and what they would advise her on based on what they have found during the activity. So this activity will hopefully get young people to think more critically about the platforms that they're using, that they use on a daily basis, and begin to recognize just how much data that they are sharing, often without realizing that they are sharing this kind of data. But more than this, it encourages learners to reflect on their, on their comfort levels around data privacy, and they also become more aware of data collection on the platforms that they use. And so this brings me to the next question that I would like to ask Andreas. If we could have Andreas back up on stage, please. So Andreas, the question I would like to ask you is, why is data so important to companies that use AI models?
So, I mean, the models are made out of the data, right? They're just a summary of the patterns we find in the data. It's the raw material that builds AI, right? Anything from search to photo filters to LLMs, right? Like all of them are just built out of data, right? I think a lot of people think about AI as being like software, like there's an engineer sitting at a desk writing code, and that code makes the LLM work. But if you just took an LLM model and you opened it like a text file, right, you just find billions of numbers about statistical relationships and the statistical relationships between those statistical relationships and so on, right? And one funny thing is, like we're still working on finding out what those numbers actually mean, right? So we have very little insight other than that the data makes the model work. Exactly what's going on in there. And without the raw material, artificial intelligence doesn't exist, right? Now, the fact that like it doesn't exist without the data existing doesn't mean that we're allowed to be reckless with your data, right? The public trusted us with it, and it's our job to treat that trust with respect, right? But I mean, people have this idea that like the products can exist in the absence of the data that constructs them, and that's, I mean, I don't think that's just really the case.
Yeah. And so the data makes data-driven systems data-driven.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just driven, right? It's constructed out of the data.
Yes, yeah, totally. All right, thank you, Andreas. We're gonna put you back in the background again. See you later. And we're gonna talk about what we hope that young people take away from doing data detective as an activity. Because what matters here is that young people begin to develop their own sense of digital agency. And through Aya's story, I hope that they're able to explore the trade-offs, to ask thoughtful questions, and to make decisions that align with their own values. And again, we can't dictate what these values should or could be. But as educators, what we're really doing here is laying out the foundation for informed, empowered, and ethical engagement with AI technologies, not just for now, but for when AI technologies become a much bigger part of our lives and young people's lives as well. So now that your learners have stepped into the shoes of a user navigating the intricacies of social media, we're going to flip the script. And so the second activity, called AI Business Boss, we're going to look at what happens when they become the creators of these technologies, the ones designing the AI applications that they will use. And so in this activity, they will take on the role of AI application developers who have to pitch an idea to a very wealthy fictional investor called the AI Business Boss. But there's a twist, because they have to design their AI application using ethical and fair data practices. Now, the rules of the game are simple. Every AI application team draws an ask card and a must-have card. They have 5 minutes to incorporate these cards into their fictional startup ID, and then they have a minute to pitch it to the fictional business boss. But they also need to consider some questions. So they will need to ask themselves, what kind of data will their app collect? How will they protect users' data? And how will they explain their choices to the AI business boss? Because the AI business boss will evaluate their startups and their IDs, and will only invest in in IDs and AI applications that ensure data collection is fair, ethical, and transparent. And so the AI business boss will ask questions like, are the privacy and safety concerns addressed properly? Is all the data collected necessary, or is there a way to minimize data collection? Is the startup asking for users' permission to collect data? And most importantly, is the user's data used in a way that is ethical and fair? And so we have a range of ask cards and a range of must-have cards that students pick randomly. So here, for example, we have an ask card that asks the team to develop an AI app that helps users find lost socks using the camera on the phone. But their app also must have a feature to delete user data on request. And what is so great about this activity is that it gives them the opportunity to think like developers, not just as consumers. And it gives them a taste of what real ethical challenges are faced by the people designing today's AI technologies are. And also encourages them to think critically about the balance between innovation, convenience, and responsibility. Now, what I hope they will take away from this activity is that it will open up powerful discussions around the role that companies play in shaping the technology landscape. Because how much responsibility should tech companies carry when it comes to creating tools that are ethical, transparent, and secure? But also, how can we empower young people to demand better, safer, and more inclusive systems as both users and as future creators? Now, these two activities together, so Data Detective and Data Business Boss, they offer learners the opportunity to explore these questions as well, right? And they allow them to explore the complexities of AI and data privacy. We also have a range of discussion points to help facilitate these conversations more. And just like how Mac explained at the beginning of this session, we create these safe spaces where students and learners can explore these questions, and they can ask themselves questions like, why is your data valuable to companies that use AI models? And that's what we just talked about with Andreas, right? We also have them think about the AI-driven systems that they're interacting with, and what kind of data they are providing these systems with. And what we would like educators, or the one guiding these discussions, to draw out from these conversations and these discussions is all structured in the educator guide. So we help you facilitate these discussions. And so, for example, you could draw out that computer systems were once designed in a rule-based approach, but are now being designed in a data-driven approach, or how Andreas described it, in a data-constructed way, I think he said. Apologies if I said that incorrectly. But also to be aware what's happening to the data that they are providing to the app. And the key messages from the discussions are that we now live in a data-driven world, and what data choices, what privacy choices will you make in this world? Because when we give young people the tools to understand data and how AI systems work, we're also giving them the confidence to make informed decisions and choices in a world that will continue to be shaped by these technologies. But of course, these questions don't just stop at the classroom, code club, or at home, or at any of the educational environments that you're planning on delivering these resources in. The reality is that young people are navigating AI systems and AI-embedded applications in real time on a daily basis as we speak, but often without knowing how much data they are giving away, or even being aware of what is being done with their data behind the scenes. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit and dig into the broader context of AI, data, and responsibility. We're going to bring in Andreas back on stage, because you really helped us understand kind of the technical side of data-driven systems. But let's talk about why data is important for us, and what kind of steps young people could take. So the first question that I would like to ask you is that when it comes to protecting personal data, what are some steps that young people can take?
Yeah, I mean, I spend about like 30% of my time in a week like dealing with settings pages, right? Like I spend just a fantastic amount of time going through and making sure that like there's relatively granular control over what data you have, what data we have, right? So take a look at it. I would really like somebody to come and appreciate my work. Normally, there are a bunch of switches you can flip to change the privacy state and make decisions about the collection and use of your data. So go through the settings, review the materials provided to you about each of the settings, and turn off anything you're not comfortable with Google having, right? Like, and honestly, I would be a little like if you're not comfortable at all, we don't want to have the data, right? One other thing is, like when you do send data as a kid, right? Like to like some service, there might be third parties who have access, right? So if you have a system that's associated with your school might have access, right? If you have a system that's under parental supervision, your parents might have access, right? So there are more privacy relationships with respect to a kid's data than there typically are with respect to like an adult's, right? That's something you probably want to check out as well.
Yeah, so it's very good to know that we have all these choices that we can make. So for anyone who's using these platforms, right? Which brings me to the next questions, which are, what are some of the practical ways that young people can balance getting good recommendations or having access to the apps they want while protecting their data? So how can we do that trade-off?
Yeah, so I think it's sometimes difficult to work through precisely which data relates to which features and how. So what I might do is work backwards from what the feature does to what data you think might be related to it, right? So think about like whether the product needs to know something directly in order to give you something that you're asking for right now, like search results, right? Or whether the product needs to know in order to make better guesses about what you need, like a YouTube recommender, right? So if you're lost and you're using maps to navigate home, you've got to tell us where you are and where your home is. We can't give you the route between those two places unless we know what route you're asking for, right? And some of that is true no matter how complex the product is, right? If you're talking to Gemini and trying to get an answer, well, you've got to send some text up to Gemini so we can send you the answers back. But the fact that you needed to send us some data at some point doesn't mean you don't have any choices, right? For instance, we don't have to hold on to the data forever, right? We can delete the data, right? In a lot of cases, you can choose not to have us remember the data at all. And a lot of times, especially with things like search, we'll turn around and make data about a person directly into data about people immediately. So recording the fact that people clicked on the Wikipedia article for World War II after they searched for World War II, right? We might just sort of do the digital equivalent of putting a little tick mark in the Wikipedia article for World War II box, and then not remembering who did it, right? Sometimes though, like we want to give you better options without having to ask. And that's, I think, where you'll see like the sort of most leverage, like over what kind of recommendations you get, right? So if you turn off watch history, right, you're not going to get recommendations related to what you've watched before, right? And I think there's a question about like how much people value not having to click the mouse a couple times because you think the video you're watching is annoying, right? So I have watch history at home because I know exactly how watch history works, right? And I'm comfortable with how it works, right? But not everybody is in a position to see how the sausage is made, and not everybody is comfortable, like with that data being, like up in the cloud. And if that's not something you're comfortable with, you can just turn it off, right? I also want to mention that there are companies in the world other than Google. So sometimes what you want is a product that Google doesn't provide. So for instance, there are Maps products, right, that don't have any actual interaction with a cloud service at all, right? So if you're uncomfortable telling anything in the cloud, like where you are and where you want to go, that might be the product for you, right? It's all about what you're comfortable with and what your parents are comfortable with. Again, if you don't want your data going to Google, we don't have to have your data.
I think that's so. I think one of the things we really say in the resources as well is this idea that like sometimes the choice is finding an alternative, and that's okay. Like if you're, if you do think you're uncomfortable with any of the policies, so it's really good that even, you also reiterating that, right? It's like, if you're not comfortable with that, there are map services out there that don't interact with the cloud service, will draw you a route. Thank you, that's really cool.
Yeah, and this is all about like what we as users could do, or what kind of choices we can make to ensure that the data collection is in line with our own values. But if we flip the script now and we ask the question about companies, so what role do tech companies play in ensuring that AI systems handle data securely and ethically?
Yeah, I mean, we're responsible for your data in exactly the same sense that a bank is responsible for your money, right? Our first responsibility is to make sure that nobody steals it, right? Security is really important to us, but we also have a responsibility to make sure that it's responsibly invested, and that it's responsibly invested primarily for your benefit, right? If we're going to build something using the data that we're holding in trust, it has to be something that benefits users, not just something that makes us money, right? Making sure that we're trustworthy is our first job, even before building all of these neat toys.
Yes, thank you so much for all these answers and for being so transparent, and for clarifying so much to us. So if we take everything together, what we've discussed so far in this session, in this webinar, because we're coming to an end, unfortunately, is that by helping young people understand how their data is being collected and used, we're not just teaching them how to protect their privacy, but we're giving them the tools to become more informed, more empowered, and more ethical participants in an AI-driven world. So we have covered quite a lot today, from personalized YouTube feeds to data-driven AI models. We looked at data detective and the AI business boss activity as part of the Your Data and AI lesson from the AI safety unit. And if there is one thing that I hope you are taking away, is that understanding how AI systems work is just as important as understanding how to use them. And by helping young people understand how their data is collected and used, we're not just teaching them how to protect their privacy, but we're also giving them the tools to become more informed, empowered, and ethical participants in this AI-driven world. And whether you're a teacher, youth leader, or a parent, you have a huge role to play in this journey. But you don't have to be an AI expert to facilitate these conversations. We have developed everything in a way to help you as much as possible to do these activities, to facilitate these conversations, and to go on these learning journeys with your learners. Plus all the materials, including the videos, the unplugged activities, and the discussion prompts, they all come with very specific and very detailed instructions and guidance, and they're also free to use.
Yeah, much like Andreas spends 30% of his time in settings pages, Rahana and I spend probably 50% of our time in lesson plans, making sure that we've provided as much guidance and as much support as possible for leading these sessions. So it's really, really important to us that you have everything you need.
And we do it all with so much joy, and feel very lucky that we're able to play this kind of role and help all of you all over the world go on these learning journeys together with your learners. So I think that is it from us. Thank you so much for joining us. Andreas, thank you so much for joining us from the other side of the world. If you would like to check out the AI safety resources, they are the hyperlink above, so rpf.io/AI safety-webinar. If you would like to get in touch, you can do so by aiprojects@raspberrypi.org. And I hope you will join us for our next webinar as well, which is next week Monday, I suppose, and the timing will be
it's 4 till 5 p.m. BST. So it's next Monday, 4 to 5 p.m. BST. Rahana will be back with another one of our colleagues, Emma, to talk about media literacy in the age of AI. A really important topic that I'm super excited to see.
Yes, me too. So thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Andreas, for joining us and for your expert insights. We really enjoyed having you on.
It's been a pleasure.
Amazing. And wherever you are in the world, hope you have a lovely rest of your day, rest of your evening, whatever it is. And we will see you again on Monday.
Take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.